Hi crafters, this is Cindy from mrsbscraftroom.blogspot.com here with the second video in my video series using the gypsy and my Cricut. Today we are going to be making a card using the cartridges Walk in My Garden, Just Because Cards, and George in Basic Shapes. So let's get started. On the gypsy we are going to select the 12 by 12 mat. There we go. And we are going to start with Just Because cards. So going to Just Because cards. And I'm going to select any card feature. This is going to be the card base. So let's just select a card. Now, once we have the card selected, I have found that the best way for me to do this using this card, Just Because card, is to use the real dial size. So we are going to select the real dial size button here on the right, and we're going to size the card at 8.5, let's see, 8.5 wide, 8.5 by 5.5 tall. So that will make a standard A2 card. So, whoops, what happened there? I want that to be 8.5. It changed on me. Okay, now what I want to do is using the Advanced key and using the kerning tool, which is the little tool there with the arrow, I'm going to turn my card on its side because I like to save as much paper as I can. And I'm going to cut it on the left side of my mat there. Okay, back to the basic. Now you know this changed again. Why did that do that? So that should be 5.5. Not quite sure why it's doing that. Oh, duh. Okay, so for those of you that make the same mistake, I didn't turn the ratio button off. So I need to unlink the ratio button. Unlink. Now I can change each size independently of the other. That was what I was doing wrong. Okay, so there we are, 8.5 by 5.5. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is I want to create a frame to put on the front of my card. And so I'm going to go to George and Basic Shapes and select just a rectangle. So under George and Basic Shapes, you would do the Shift lock and just pick, you know, it could be a square there. I'm going to size it the way I want. Making sure real dial size is on and the little link button for the ratio is off. I'm going to make the layer 4 wide by 5.25, which would be 5.25. Now, if I turn that over, let's see, using the Advanced key and the turning button, we're going to turn that layer to be on its side also, and I can move it over and see that it does fit right inside my card. So that'll be my layer. But I want to make it a little bit fancy of a layer. So what I want to do is add another item inside to create more of a frame. So I'm going to go back to Just Because cards, and using the Shift function, I now can find some frames here. So I'm going to use this particular scalloped, it's kind of a scalloped frame. It's got a little bit more detail than a scallop. And I'm going to take that into the center of my rectangle, and I'm going to size that to fit in my rectangle. So turning on my ratio key for now, I'm just going to enlarge that to be the size that I want it to fit in the center. And that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is group those two items together. So I'll hit the group key and then the rectangle, and now you notice that they're both blue. And then I'm going to hit the group key again to close off that group. So now when I move that, I can move that box anywhere I want and they're grouped together. But oh, one thing I forgot to do, I want to make a back for that frame. So when I cut that out, so let's ungroup that real quick and just select the rectangle portion, go to the Advanced tab, and use our copy key and just copy an extra rectangle there. So that's going to be the back for this particular frame. So I want to go back to my basics key and I want to group these two together again. I'll close off that group. All right, so now I want to make the flowers that I'm going to put on the inside of my card. So I'm going to create another mat. So I will select the little plus button in the top, which creates another layer. There we go. So now I'm on the second layer of my project. And here's where I'm going to go to Walk in My Garden and pick out my image. So Walk in My Garden. Go. And I'm going to use the border feature, which is here, the border feature, and I'm going to select the sunflowers. So there we go. All right, now I'm going to take those sunflowers and I'm going to move those up into the center of that frame that I've made. Take off the real dial size, make sure the ratio button is linked, and I'm going to enlarge those to about the size, to be the size that I'd like those to be. So I'm going to zoom in and take a look at this to make sure. That's one of the nice things about the layer key is I can actually see the first layer and I can decide if this is the right size or not, or if it should be a little bit bigger. We'll go ahead and make it just a little bit bigger. There we go. All right, so that should fit right inside that frame. All right, so now we've got that layer. Now one of the we can create layers for those flowers, and we can do that. What I want to do is make sure that I still have the flowers highlighted, so when I go into the Walk in My Garden, the layer feature, and I select the shift lock, still having the border selected, I can then select the daisies layer. And when I do that, it's going to come in at the same size as the image that I've already sized, so those layers will layer on top of those appropriately. So I'm going to ungroup those so I can move the layers independently of the flower image. And if you notice on this layer image, in addition to having the flowers, we also have the centers, which I want to have the flowers cut in yellow and the center cut in brown. So instead of having to cut this twice, everything twice, we can use the new hide contour feature on this particular one, and we can hide the items that we don't want to cut. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and copy and make two of those. So I've got one here, over here, and one here. So the first one, I'm going to make sure it's highlighted, go to the hide contour feature. Now we're going to, if you see, I don't know if you can see or not, there's a little bitty red box. And I'm just going to go through and hide all of those because I'm going to take off the circles in this group first. So I'll just go through all of these. And if you can see those disappearing. This is such a great feature. Love it. There we go. So now it's going to cut are just the 3 daisies. So I say okay. Now we'll go over to the other layer that we copied and we'll do the same thing. This time I'm going to take off the sunflower piece. So I'm going to hide all of those pieces. And if you notice, I'm pushing next or previous, and that way I don't have to worry about touching the image and getting it to the right place. I can just go right in line where I'd like for it to go and hide. There we go. All right. Now I do want to go ahead and hide all of those individual little cutouts that are inside of those circles because I am going to use my super cute little Peachy Keen face stamps to put little faces on my sunflowers. So I'm just going to go through here real quick and get rid of all these little dots. A little bit of time. There we go. So now I just have circles. So now I'm going to cut. I'll cut those circles out of brown. I'll cut the flowers from yellow. And then I'll cut the main image out of green so that I can get the stems put together there. Okay, and so let's get started. I'm going to go cut these out, and I'll be back in just a sec with the pieces cut, and we'll assemble the card.